Hi, I'm Rob Vanstone, and welcome to the what are we at now? 110, 112, triple digit edition of the Rider Rumblings video podcast. I am here with my worthy constituent, Murray McCormick, veteran Rough Rider beat writer, and we've we averted disaster thanks to our producer Austin Davis moments ago as we started to record. Uh, I was asked, "What is that white stuff on your nose?" It was yogurt. So I almost did a podcast with yogurt on my nose. And thank you to the attentive colleagues that I have. We've averted some embarrassment. I'll try and continue to avert embarrassment for the remainder of this podcast. Murr, um, what do you make of that preseason game on Tuesday, 25-16, the Winnipeg Blue Bombers defeating the Saskatchewan Roughriders before perhaps 16 spectators at Mosaic
Wow.
Stadium? Any takeaways that are front of mind?
I've never seen, you can't even call it a crowd, that small of a crowd for a Rider function at the new Mosaic Stadium where Old Saves. I think zero on the attendance line says
That
so
was
much.
funny.
That's
That was
funny.
funny.
So what was the reason for the zero? The fact there was an NHL playoff game between the Oilers and the Avalanche. It's a Tuesday night 6:30 kickoff and a preseason game that was on TV. Was it just a meaningless game? Was it just a whole bunch of other things? The Regina Red Sox are playing. I hope they had more fans than the Riders did, but
They
I don't
said
know, Rob.
450, and they actually had a pretty enthusiastic crowd by the sounds of it. So
So I like my people ask, what do you read into that? And I listed all those aforementioned reasons and went, it's not the end of the world. It's a preseason game. They had to play it. Unfortunately, there wasn't 30,000 people there, but holy
one
smokes,
factor I would point out is that they weren't playing anybody. I walked
yeah,
around the stadium before the game, and in one lap of the concourse, I saw probably at least a half dozen Cody Fajardo jerseys. If you're a Cody Fajardo fan, you didn't see Cody Fajardo play. The first person I saw come into the stadium, because I was there right at this when it opened, was somebody wearing a jersey 3, Nick Marshall. Nope, Nick Marshall isn't playing either. So
yeah.
they went out of their way to give people incentives not to go. And sure enough, people complied. I wonder if there's still a bit of a COVID hangover,
Yeah,
and in terms of wariness and in terms of finances that may
yeah,
be impacting the attendance as well.
yeah. But we're not panicking by any stretch. I think we're still going to see improved numbers once the regular season starts and get into a regular season mode. But you know, I didn't feel a whole lot of buzz. I know you went to do an atmosphere piece, and I said to you, "Good luck finding atmosphere," because there was very few people even outside the stadium. So it's just maybe one
It
of
was
these
like
blips.
what it felt like a ghost town outside the stadium.
Yeah, it felt like a practice, and I
It
know
it
well,
really
like a
did.
the Labor like that the Saturday they have the fan festival before the Labor Day game. It felt a little like that, a little not quite as exciting, but just number wise and whatnot. But they got to play them, and you know the Riders. I don't know. You and I have sat in the press box after, and we go, "What did we learn from that?" And we scratched our heads and said, "Well, not
You
a heck of a
scratched your
lot."
head more than I did, obviously.
Yeah, I know. I leave
Sorry, bad
marks when
joke.
I leave marks when I scratch my head. Uh, what did we learn? And we kind of said, well, Mason Fine may have the leg up, but I kind of watched. Sorry, Rob, I watched that game again the other yesterday, and
Oh my
thought
goodness.
maybe Jake
We
Dolegala
got to
had.
let human resources know about
I
that.
know Jake Dolegala did better than I thought he would, and you know Troy Williams had some moments when he showed some mobility. So the backup quarterback position may not be as sold as wrapped up as we thought, but I still be very surprised if it was anybody but Mason Fine. I think that he's just showed that he's a guy he looked more comfortable with the offense. Having said those good things about the other two guys, he looked more comfortable with the offense, and he's been around. And I found an interesting comment. Someone asked him about what happened last year and how he ended up being the second string quarterback, and he said he didn't even know, which was kind of telling because
Yeah,
we
that
we
remains a
still haven't.
mystery.
Yeah, and it's not. Let's dig into this mystery and blow it wide open because stuff like still a second string quarterback and Craig Dickinson. We were asking about him a lot last year. Was kind of give me the look like, okay, it's second string quarterback, Merck. Come on. So we move on a little
Well,
bit from there,
yeah,
but
well,
it's still
you're
important
one hit
because
away from disaster. Cody
exactly.
Fajardo went from second string quarterback to most outstanding player in the West Division in 2 seconds in terms of his elevation on the depth chart. So it's a pretty big deal, and it's a pretty big ask, especially with an 18-game regular season looming,
Yeah,
and a quarterback who likes to run. Uh,
yeah. But who's
the
been
Winnipeg
pretty
Blue Bombers
healthy.
sat out Zach Collaros very tactically for both of their preseason games. There's
Yeah.
only so many snaps that you can get away with as a quarterback in this league.
But it was hard looking at that roster sheet they posted to count up how many starters there were that or proposed starters, and I ended up with about a half a dozen among the
Yeah,
group.
I really stretched it with the Riders and I counted number of surefire starters and number of players who actually have a chance of starting, and the most I could get to was 9. I talked to Jeff Hamilton of the Winnipeg Free Press. He said the Bombers dressed 2 probable starters,
Yeah.
and they still
But,
won quite convincingly.
but what can they do? Like they have to play these games, and we talked about last year, and I think part of the issue is last year they didn't have any preseason games to set up this regular season, and we saw what was like a pretty mediocre offensive season. They never really caught on. Now that's putting a whole lot of weight on preseason games to carry your whole regular season, but I still think there was some reasons why the offense was down. Things weren't quite as sharp last year. They didn't have preseason games, not to prepare the guys,
But
just to
then they have a
find out
play.
who can
But then
play.
they have a preseason game, and they don't play their players anyway. So what? What
So I
good would it have
know.
done them to have preseason football last year if they were going to treat them like they did uh, Tuesday's game?
I'm
They're
running
talking
out
out
of
of both sides of their
excuses.
mouth.
I've run out of excuses to justify that game, Rob. You win. I don't know why. It just was a bad game.
You know,
The first half, 3-0. I think the Avalanche and Oilers had scored. It was 4-3 or something in that game. By the time the Riders got to 3, or the Bombers got 3-0 or something. I wasn't watching the hockey game, so
well, on Monday, I asked Craig Dickinson jokingly because his previous preseason opener as the Riders head coach, they'd lost 37-1. So I asked him jokingly, "Can you promise the fans you'll score more than 1 point on Tuesday?" And he seemed pretty convinced that they would. I was pretty convinced that they wouldn't well into the fourth quarter. I had an absolute killer lead from my column if if the
I
Riders had
hate it.
been shut out. So
I hate it when
I did
facts
some
get
I
in
did
the
some
way of a
number
good
crunching, by
story.
the way.
Oh,
What's
good.
that?
Oh, good.
Um, Interesting
Preseason
stuff.
number crunching.
Well, I think the Mason Fine um, situation, people are kind of defaulting to it and saying he's got the inside track and the number 2 job. But he played a much simpler game than did Jake Dolegala. He threw primarily very safe passes. Jake Dolegala's average pass through the air traveled 10.8 yards. Mason Fine, less than 5 yards. 4 of his passes were behind the line of scrimmage. So, yeah, his numbers were going to be better, 13 for 18 compared to 6 for 10. But he threw safe little hitch screen passes. It was a very paint by numbers type offense. So I think because of the manner in which the offense was operated under Mason Vine, yeah, his numbers are going to be better, and probably it's going to seem like it was a little more impressive. But there was no aggression to the throws, whereas Jake Dolegala's throws were almost all well beyond the line of the scrimmage. It was a nice throw by Mason Fine to Jesper Weah for the touchdown. And that was his longest throw of the day. It traveled 20 yards in the air, although it was only a 2-yard
Yeah,
touchdown.
true. Yeah.
But by and large, it was safe passes that Craig Dickinson could have completed with some proficiency. So
Is that a
it's almost
bad
an
thing,
apples
Rob?
and orange. It's an almost an apples and orange comparison though, because he didn't really get a chance to see if Mason Fine can really air it out, and they didn't really give Jake Dolegala a chance to do what he it was apparently his forte, which is really air it out. The only long pass that was thrown all day was by Troy Williams. So we still haven't seen the gun over a long distance that Jake Dolegala supposedly has. So I don't know. I want to see more, and I want to see more of those quarterbacks in different situations, and I want to see Mason Fine tested, which I don't think he was necessarily on Tuesday, and I want to see Jake Dolegala air it out to see if there's some throws that he can make that may be beyond the capabilities of the other quarterbacks.
I
There, that's
don't
my
know
little
if I'm
tangent for the day.
I don't know if I'm thinking that's going to happen too much tomorrow night against the Lions. I somehow wonder the starters are going to play the first half, most of the first half, and then the prospects come in for the second half. Maybe they will let out. Maybe they're going to have to find out what they can do. I still remember one of Jake's first or second passes, and he just threw a rocket. I don't know if you remember that pass. Just we saw how strong his arm was early in the game. So
But it was
he's a
strong, but those were intermediate passes. I wanna see him
yeah
air it out. The Bombers
yeah
weren't reluctant to air it out. I
no they
saw what
weren't.
Dakota Prukop did. The second touchdown pass he threw was beautiful. At least the Bombers made an attempt to entertain the fans that did show up
Yeah
on Tuesday. The Rough Riders just played their usual boring, conservative, uh, take what the defense gives you offense that was way too tiresome last year. Yeah, it was only one preseason game, but uh, the Rough Riders really didn't try to test the limits of their backup quarterback or prospective backup quarterbacks while supposedly evaluating them.
yeah. Well, they get another chance tomorrow night to do a little bit of that. Rob, I know we were watching the running backs, and you talked to Frankie
Frankie
Hickson
Hickson,
before the game, and
yes,
I think I actually Jamal Moore only had I think was it 2 carries for 23 yards or maybe
3 for 23.
3 for 23. So of all I thought he looked the best in his 3 carries of all the running backs in his little time.
No
But
way. Frankie Hickson looked way
You give
better.
me a chance to say but Frankie came on stronger towards the end, and he had a block on one of the Blue Bombers that was coming. Jake ended up getting sacked on the play, regardless, but he just blew a block there. That I guess. Sorry, can I check because it looks like the Rough Riders transaction moving right now. Do you want to take a look at that? Can we
Sure.
do that?
You take a look at that and I'll start talking.
Okay.
I mean, Frankie Hickson, there was a greater sample of work, not abundant in terms of carries, but Jamal Morrow had the one carry that was really nice for 16 yards. Frankie Hickson consistently showed that he could make things happen, even when there really didn't appear to be a lot there. What we saw from Morrow and Hickson is what we didn't see last year, and
Yeah.
arguably in 2019, which is a running back with acceleration as soon as he gets the ball. I mean, last year over William Powell's first 40 carries, only two of them exceeded 10 yards. And generally, and he's a different style runner too. He was more kind of patient once he got the ball. And he would just a different style. But to see a running back get the ball and go whoosh,
Yeah.
I think that's an example of younger legs, quicker legs, and maybe a different style of running back too. And I left that game feeling better about the running backs than I did about any other facet of the Rough Rider game. Although Kari Vedvik punted
Well,
well.
what did he
Vedvik
do in the
punted
Western
well.
Final? What did he do in the Western Final?
29.5.
Oh yeah, that's true.
We haven't yet seen if he can be a cold weather punter, but he did exceedingly well on
So
Tuesday.
we're going to jump on this fresh breaking news for Rider Rumblings and hope it stays for a while. The Riders finally released their cuts that were supposed to have been announced
The
yesterday.
Wednesday's cuts on a Thursday.
Yeah, so here they are.
So
We're going to just
the result of
start.
Friday's game will be available on Saturday.
We'll start at the top of the list, and two names are probably going to jump out at you, Rob. Okay, there's an American defensive lineman, Benjamin Davis, an American defensive back, Stephen Denmark, a national defensive back and a draft pick, Vincent Detier, an American wide receiver, Paul McRoberts, an
That
American
doesn't
defensive.
surprise me.
Me either. Hang on, let me finish.
Sorry.
Defensive back Josh Nurse, who's an American. Offensive lineman Maurice Simba, who is a 6'8" giant. Defensive back Will Sutherland, another American. Another American
It's on
defensive
Sunderland.
back. Sutherland?
Isn't it Will Sunderland?
Well, I had Sutherland here. Sutherland.
It's
Sunderland.
Sunderland.
So
Anyway, sorry.
it's Sutherland on the release. Sorry, folks. An American defensive back of Levante Taylor, and American quarterback Troy Williams, which, Craig mentioned on Tuesday. He would have liked to have carried four quarterbacks into the preseason game, but there's no way four quarterbacks. I'm talking Cody,
No.
Jake, and Mason are going to get an opportunity to play, so he may as well get rid of them. McRoberts, interesting point, and I probably won't make the paper. And I was putting it on my 5 players to watch, and I had McRoberts on my list because for 2 training camps in a row, he was a star. Everyone we talked about him, and training real season would open, he wouldn't be on the regular season roster. He got on the regular season roster, towards the end of 2021. He was with the number ones at training camp to start out this year. I kind of thought he was a bit of a placeholder for Kyron Moore. He didn't really have the highlight reel catches, and that's because I thought Keon Schaefer-Baker, Duke Williams, and Shaq Evans seemed to be getting a lot of the passes from Cody with the number ones, and rightfully so because they seem to be, the guys are going to be the chemistry. So McRoberts really didn't get a chance to play, and then on Tuesday, the passes off his hands it was a little high. We say that, but I think he should have caught it. It was interception, and we're going from there. So kind of Paul McMartin surprised me a little bit, and so Vincent Detier is had a great camp. I noticed him a lot, and he's a Canadian. He was a draft pick, but they got to cut someone. So I don't know how many.
Well,
I'm
he
going to
got
contact.
he got burnt a bit on the long touchdown pass to Wop Filior
Yeah.
on Tuesday.
So
So
that's 9 guys they cut, which is sad, but they've
I thought
guys
they
are
had to
probably.
cut 10.
Well, that's what I'm counting. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9,
The
9.
uh
Maybe
the
more to
McRoberts
come.
thing, I mean, you look at the receivers that they brought in, both of the special two in particular who scored touchdowns
Mhm.
on Tuesday.
Did you break into
Jesper
my
Wee, is it
computer?
we? Is it we or Weah?
I'm
And
not sure
and
yet. We'll
and,
find. We will
and
find out.
Dooley Aristide Jr. They both had touchdown
Oh,
catches. They're both younger players. They're both very impressive. And when you're bringing in a younger guy, an inexperienced guy who clearly outperforms a veteran, and one that they never really seemed inclined, as you alluded to earlier, to use extensively in the past. That doesn't surprise me at all.
it's also this.
Neither
I think,
does the release of a quarterback, because it's just impractical to go into a second preseason game with four quarterbacks when you want to give your starters some time,
and he's
and you still
29.
got
I
to sort
think.
out the other two.
I know.
I'm
I
sorry.
should. He's Paul was 29. I think. Is that off the top
Yeah,
of our heads? Yeah, he was. Too bad. He was a decent guy. He kind of wish he had his chances. I think he got all of his chances. I think he just somehow it didn't catch on, and so people will be wondering about training camp busts. I guess joins the long list of Terrence
well,
and
I
others.
still wonder why they were more excited about playing Ricardo Lewis than Paul
Yeah,
McRoberts last year. That was the chance. He came in for one game, caught four passes, all in the second half
yeah,
against Ottawa, I believe. And then after that, it was hello there, Ricardo Lewis, who really didn't do a heck of a lot for a considerable period. Yet Paul McRoberts was still sitting, and you've got to wonder what was it that didn't immediately meet the eye, at least from this perspective. The coaches must have seen something that led to their hesitancy to use him, even when
yeah.
it seemed that circumstances were most conducive to playing him last year due to injury. And even then, Paul McRoberts wasn't used a lot.
Yeah. Rob, let's quickly move on to tomorrow night. And what are you anticipating from the starters playing the first half, prospects playing the second half? It may be a
Is
mixture
that
of that
definitely
too.
the plan?
That sounds like the plan. They got to play. They got to get the starters going. They got to get. They
The
haven't
Bombers
played
didn't
since.
think they had to.
Yeah, I know. But I saw the green and white game. None of the starters played quite a bit. And I know you put as much weight on the green and white game as you do on a preseason game, but they looked okay. Cody completed 9 consecutive passes and capped it with a touchdown against Keon Schaefer-Baker. But don't get too excited about that because they weren't exactly playing tough D. But he still had to throw the passes and whatnot in the green and white game. But just I'm kind of looking for, well, not with Roberts anymore, but I'm kind of looking to see, and I know maybe certain. So I want to see what AC Leonard does. He hasn't really done a heck of a lot in training camp, and I'm not saying he hasn't, but I just haven't noticed him. And maybe because they know what
Yeah,
he's
but you don't
conducive.
have to notice him.
But
You
it's still,
know,
I think,
I'd be more
it's,
interested. I'd be more interested in Charleston Hughes than in AC Leonard tomorrow.
yeah, I
Does
think
he still have
Charles.
any kind of gas in the tank?
Well, he didn't, and in the green and white game, as I go back to, that's the last time I saw the veterans play. There really wasn't a whole lot of effort. No, like effort's not there. It just wasn't that type of green and white game where there was lots of pressure and stuff, things like that. It really was more like a glorified practice with pads and a little bit of referees and stuff. So yeah, I'm curious to see Hughes. I'm still going to look at AC. I still want to see what he can do, what his kind of tone he's going to
We know
set
what
for
he
this
can
season.
do.
Yeah, can I? It's my guy. It's
He's not.
my guy. I'm watching. No, but I haven't. We've also mentioned many times what we think Charleston Hughes can do, and I wouldn't be surprised if he has a big half. If he goes out and maybe gets the sack and surfs, and that'd be pretty cool if he could do that because it's. I have noticed a happier Charleston Hughes at practice, a little more personal, doing with the fans. We saw a great shot of him mugging it up with the fans in Saskatoon at the green and white game. So he's really popular, and maybe they found a 38-year-old diamond in the rough. We call him a diamond in the rough. What would you say for a 38-year-old guy who can come back after a season like he had with Toronto, Rob?
I don't know. I mean, myriad reasons for why that may have happened. Sometimes just the grass isn't always greener, and many Rough Rider players have discovered that they've
Yeah,
left here and never really had the same career or even the adulation that they did here. I want to see more, as we alluded to earlier, of the quarterbacks. I want to see Fine versus Dolagala. I think that is still up in the air. Um, I think the running back situation bears watching. If Frankie Hickson can have another big game, I think that allows them to solve another issue, which is who is the returner going to be, and
yeah,
it certainly won't be Troy Maine Pope, based upon
no.
what we saw on Tuesday. Um, so you can comfortably put Jamal Morrow at returner and know that you're going to get some good returns there.
Yeah,
And Frankie Hickson, to me, I want to see more of that. I think that's really
sure.
intriguing. The linebacking situation intrigues me. How all that is going to work itself out, especially with the hash mark change and perhaps different uh, prerequisites for playing the linebacking
Yeah.
positions, because you don't have the sideline as a to your advantage anymore on one side of the field. So
And
I
you
want to
have
see
a
how the
whole,
linebackers are going to play out, and there's an abundance of linebackers, so
yeah.
that is something to watch as well.
Especially with Micah Teitz going to be starting the season on the sixth gamer with, and he was your kind of typical Canadian will linebacker, a little bigger, kind of played the run and was pretty good at coverage. But I sort of think that the will linebacker is going to be more of along the lines of a bigger DB, one of those bigger defensive backs like a Patrick Levels, or maybe Nelson Lacombo can drop there from corner into playing that position. But there's a lot of experimentation going on, and I think coaches are still good. And I think the one we're all going to watch is see what Chris Jones does with that position with Ebden, to see how he lines up at will and what he, because he's kind of the what a defensive genius. Is that a fair phrase to say?
But
You know, he
Guru
works well.
anyway,
Yeah, and
and he's got all sorts of little Maddox. Is he still using Duron Carter at safety?
I have to admit I haven't even seen that one yet. You got
Honestly,
man.
what a cool ball hawk that would be.
Oh yeah.
Duron Carter roaming the secondary with the freedom to just go chase the football.
You know what I'm
If
interested in?
that
I know
works
it's.
out, that's intriguing.
I'm also interested to see what Justin McInnis does as a receiver. He had a tough start last year. He came in out of shape because he was being a stay-at-home dad and all those kind of things that happened during the 2020 canceled season. And then he hurt his hamstring, and then came limited to a few games, and then showed up this year in great shape. Great shape. Was running with the number ones, looks really good. And then he didn't get. I don't think he had a pass thrown to him on Tuesday, but that doesn't. I don't know if that means anything. But I'm curious to see what he can do, because they need another Canadian receiver to step up to fill Braden Lenius's hole and to complement Kean Schaefer Baker. And they have a bunch, and Mitch Picton and Jake Hardy and Wesley Lewis, and I could go. There are a
Samuel
number of
Emilus is the one that
Samuel
intrigues me.
Emulus, yeah, and he has,
If he has a big game, he might walk right into a starting spot.
yeah, you could. But as I said, Justin is an experienced guy. They've invested him another first round pick like Emulus was. So I'm kind of curious to see what if he can step up and
Yeah, I
do a
mean,
lot of things.
Justin McInnis to this point really hasn't shown anything to make me think that he's ready to take that step. I uh,
Look,
I
as
mean,
you
I
said,
didn't see training camp. Apparently, he had a good camp, but
yeah,
when the lights have been on and there haven't been a lot of chances there, except for that one play on November 2nd, 2019, when he caught a 29-yard pass from Isaac Harker to set up Brett Lothner's game-winning field goal. There really hasn't been anything that makes you think, oh yeah, this
no,
is why they picked him in the
that's.
first round. We've got to see that pretty soon, because they've got a player with a comparable draft background in Samuel Emilus, who comes in
Yeah.
really highly touted. So
But they have good
that's something
Canadian.
to monitor as well.
It looks like they have a good group of Canadian receivers, and sooner or later, someone's going to step up. That's really kind of fun. BC's got Nathan Rourke, Rob, Canadian quarterback. I don't know. I haven't read how much he's going to play. Do you think? I don't know.
Not sure,
Yeah, I'm not
but
sure. I wish we
that
knew.
is an
Sorry,
intriguing.
I read as much as I could today to get an idea what BC was doing, and I really didn't get an idea what BC. So Canadian quarterback starts preseason game, significant. He started here last year. Didn't
And he
last
did,
not very long.
and threw it
Yeah.
threw a touchdown pass to Lucky Whitehead early in the
See, look at
game
me. I can
after a
remember
bad
stuff
start.
too, Rob. I'm not just a pretty face. I have a bit of a memory. Just it's getting shorter as I get older.
And you didn't almost start a podcast with yogurt on your nose, which is
Oh,
very
that would have been
crucial.
so cool. What kind of yogurt was it? just plain
It
old
was
white yogurt.
Liberty Greek yogurt, plain.
It's a
So
sad thing to say that I didn't even notice it till Austin pointed it out. So
yeah, those
you
young
have a
eyes,
nose for the news, buddy.
absolutely. So
Yeah.
anyway, I'm going to read our little outro and we are going to move on with our days here. So I'm going to try and do this with perfect elocution. So here we go. Wish me luck. If you enjoy the podcast, please leave a review and a 5-star rating. It helps us grow the podcast. You can subscribe to the show on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, Stitcher, or wherever you get your podcasts. All of these things always say wherever you get your podcasts. How did that phrase become fashionable? If you'd like to send us a question, you can email Rob at rvanstone@postmedia.com and we'll read it on the show. We promise. You can follow me, Rob, on Twitter at Rob Vanstone or Murray at Murray LP, MurrayLP. There. Next time we do this, we'll be previewing the Rough Riders Hamilton game to be played June 11th to begin the regular season. We're going to anchor our podcasts from this point forward on Tuesdays. So
And
that's
hopefully, let's talk about a preseason game.
yes. Well, it will be a distant memory and perhaps completely expunged from the memory banks by the time we next discuss this. So riders will be heading into their first practice, teeing up the regular season when we reconvene here. So for Murray McCormick and for me and Candy, who did not make a cameo appearance this time, thank you for joining us, and we will do this again next week. Have a great weekend, and thanks for your time today.